Welcome to this topic video on Node and NPM. So, we need to learn about a new tool, okay? Node.js. Where did it come from? What can it do for us? We're going to learn basic usage, running programs, reading and writing files. We're going to learn about NPM, okay, as a package manager, how we manage things with package.json, the open source repository, okay, as a script runner, and such like that. And for those that are interested, we're going to talk about some advanced understanding of how this works with asynchronous operations. Okay, so what is Node.js? Okay, it is a way of running JavaScript outside of a browser. You could say on a server, but you can just run it on your laptop. You don't have to be serving up anything if you don't want to. So, what is it? It's the JavaScript runtime. It's the JavaScript runtime built on the Chrome browser's V8 JavaScript engine. Okay. So it knows how to do JavaScript just like a browser does. And it's kept up to date with the latest JavaScript from the latest browser. Okay. It uses an interesting way of dealing with I/O and networking. So it uses what we call an event-driven, non-blocking I/O model for both networking and for file system access. Node's packaging ecosystem, NPM, is the largest ecosystem of open source libraries in the world. Okay, so if you didn't know about it, you're going to find out about it in this class because you're going to be seeing packages that are downloaded 20 million times a week. Where do you get Node.js? You get it from nodejs.org. Okay, they have executables for Linux, Mac, and Windows. Okay. Note, if you're downloading for Windows, you do not need the extra built tools. These take 3 gigabytes of extra space on Windows, or at least the last time I looked. We don't need those for this class. If you're doing other things, you might. How do you run it? From a console-like shell, you'll just type, after install, a global install, you will type node. Okay, that's great, Professor. So I can do basic math. Yep. How do I get out of it? That's always an issue. So that's why I put it right in this chart. Use .exit to exit because quit doesn't work. .quit doesn't work. Exit doesn't work, but .exit works. Okay. It's always good to be able to get in and out of a program. Okay. To run a file, we're going to type node filename.js from the command shell. Okay. For JavaScript, in the browser we have the DOM. For JavaScript on the server, using Node, we have the Node API. Okay. You need the API documentation that corresponds to your version of Node. Okay. So that would be found here, Node.js documentation. This is very complete, but very terse. No introductory material here. Okay. So I'm going to basically be giving you the Node stuff that we need to use as part of this class rather than having you go look up things too much in the documentation. Okay. Now, what do we get? JavaScript operations in browsers are heavily restricted. Okay. JavaScript running in the browser can't really touch the host computer, particularly the file system. Okay. Very limited in networking, but cannot touch your file system. That would be a glaring security hole. Okay. However, if you're running JavaScript on a server, that's the whole point of what you need, and you need full network pretty good network access too. Okay? So, via the Node.js API, JavaScript programs have access to the file system, network, and some of the operating system services. Okay? So that's what we're getting. What we lose is we don't get the DOM. We don't get the browser DOM because there's no browser. Okay? We do get the full JavaScript language. Okay, so let's get hands-on. Okay, like I said before, you can just type Node and you can type stuff in. Okay, so I can go Node, I can go x equals 7, y equals 13, very rough. Okay, it understands global variable. I can go x plus y. Okay, so we have all those things kind of like we had in the dev console, but we don't get all that wonderful, nice editing stuff. Okay, so we can run things this way. Okay, but more likely we're going to run programs that we write in files that we will put into JavaScript files. We're going to say node file name. Okay, so let's run a simple example. Okay, these are all available. Very short little pieces of code. If you want to download them, right click, save link as. Okay, that will then save that JavaScript file. Now I've got these already set up on my machine, so let's go take a look. Okay, so I claim I have them. Let's go less hi node.js. Okay, so here's the little function here being shown. Okay, what's it going to do? JavaScript array, a function, hello from Node.js, console log. So console log works, maybe, for this is iterating through an array, the for of loops. Okay, and what's this going to do? It's going to console log x, it's got backtick strings, okay, with substitution. Okay, we got all that stuff going on. Let's see if it'll actually run. So node, hi node.js. Oh, nice. All the JavaScript stuff, language features, all the modern JavaScript language features that we've been learning in this class are supported because it's based on the V8 engine. Okay. Now, couple things that you'll see in places, and it was very confusing to me at first, is there some globals. Not a lot, okay, of the documentation. You'll find underscore dir name, underscore file name, okay? And you'll find something called require and console. Console is what we're used to for logging. Require is going to be an import mechanism, and these are useful in our programs to find out the directory that our program is running from and its file name. So let's check those out. Okay, so let's try that out. And those are double underscores, or as they say in Python, dunder, for double under. Okay, I never could understand what they were saying on some of those Python things. They're going dunder this and dunder that. I'm going, sounds rude. No, double underscores. Okay, so here is a program called Who Am I? Okay, so you could copy it, paste it into a file, or let's just go take a look. I should have it here. It's called, so we're going to use the command line, less who am I? Okay, it's a small Node.js program to demonstrate the global variables underscore underscore file name and underscore underscore dir name. Okay, hello from Node, blah, blah, blah. So we're just going to print those out. Okay. The name of the file is, it's got the complete path name. The name of the directory is, okay, Lectures Express Node. Okay, so it gives us that complete information. Okay. We're going to use the dir name mechanism to do things locally to where we're running things. Okay. We're not going to get real complicated. We don't want to mess around too much with the file system, but we are going to want to be able to read and write files simply. Okay. We're not going to get into high performance stuff. Okay. Now, Node.js has this API. I said, look, there's got all sorts of things in here. File system and HTTP servers and networking modules and all sorts of things in here. How do we get access to them? Well, they don't force you to use them all in your program. What you do is you import them, okay, using require, okay? And there's going to be a separate lecture set on modules, where we'll talk about modules in general, okay? So we import this stuff into a var name, a variable name, okay, anything you choose, and that's how you'll get access to the API module. So let's do an example. Let's see how to get a list of all the files in the directory. So this is a function, okay, that's listed in the API, okay, so let's say const fs, fs file system, okay. I could have called this file system or anything I wanted. It's in here. I have to use the name fs, okay, meaning the file system module. Okay, so I'm going to import that. Now I'm going to run a function in that module, a method. Okay, I'm going to say read directory. We'll see what the synchronous means. We're going to read the directory. Okay. Oh, we're going to ask it to read the directory the file's sitting in. We're going to give it this directory name. Okay. Then I'm going to go files in current directory. What's this thing? Oh, this is going to give me back an array. This is a JavaScript array. So I've got all my map, filter, for each, etc. functions array methods. So I'm going to iterate through the array, printing out the name of everything in the array. Okay. Function f console log. Okay, let's try it. So file list API, or file list is the name of the function. Let's prove it's there. Less file list. Okay. Yeah, using a module to access the file system. Okay. Let's run it. Node. Remember, I already installed Node. File list JS. Wow, there's a lot in that. Oh, this is all my lectures associated with Express and Node. Ah, okay. So a nice, simple interface. Okay, I can ask it for everything in the file. It gives me a JavaScript array. I can loop through. I can iterate, not loop, iterate through that array using one of our nice functions. Okay. Okay. File system access. We needed to require. Okay. Next step. Let's try reading a file. Okay. Why am I doing this? Because this is something so basic that we're going to need to do, and I really don't want you to waste time trying to look this up or getting some more complicated or weird solution off the net. Okay? So seriously, if you got to read something, I expect you to copy and paste stuff out of this. Obviously, you're going to have to change the name of the file name depending on what you're trying to read. Okay? So let's run it, make sure it works. Okay? But we just need these basic operations. There's nothing to be gained by running through and digging this stuff out of the documentation yourself or off the web. Okay? So get them right here. So sync read. Okay. Professor, are you going to explain what you mean by sync read? Yes. For the advanced section at the end. Okay. So we're pulling in the file system. We're getting this name. Oh, look at this. I'm on Windows, but I'm using regular slash for file names. Yeah. you can put things together, okay, the way you're used to. You don't have to use all those backslash double escape things, okay? So that's why I'm give this demonstration. I'm on Windows, but this syntax works, okay? Like Linux, like Mac, okay. Node will take care of it. So let's try reading this thing. What are we reading? We're reading the file we already saw. Okay, so node sync read. This is a version of the file we just ran before. Okay. So I'm logging, so it's reading this thing, reading the whole thing into one big string. Okay, this thing is a string. Okay. And then I'm just logging it to the console, or logging it out. Okay, what about writing? Easy peasy, same thing. We need our file system. We need to give it a name. Okay, just a little text. Is this right? Giving it some data. Notice I'm putting in my line feed character return thing. Okay. F name, I have to give it the name to write, give it the data. Okay, write. So let's see if this works. First of all, what do we need to check? Let's see if there's already a file named temp write, and if there is, we'll get rid of it. Less temp write. Nope. Oh, file name temp write. Okay. So node sync write. Wrote the test file temp write. Remember, I wrote that out. Just tell me that it did something. It's not doing that. Okay, now let's see. Can we see temp write? Just a little text did it right. Hey, I didn't tell you anything amazing. Use this if we're just going to do some simple file writing. Why do I say this? Because on our server, we'll be using a database. Okay, we're not going to directly write things ourselves. Okay, the file systems. Okay, let's keep going. We get network access. Okay. Now, I teach networking sometimes, and one of the problems would always be the commands to find out about network interfaces were completely dependent on what operating system. Here, we can find out about network interfaces with a small Node.js program that runs across Linux, Mac, and Windows. Okay, what am I doing? Oh, a require. I'm going to get their stuff about operating systems, the OS. Okay, then I'm going to go get network interfaces, os.oh, I'm making this call. What is this thing going to be? Oh, this thing, let int f in network. Oh, this is iterating through a JavaScript object. Okay. Only interested in IPv4 interfaces. Okay. So what do I go in? Let addresses equals network interfaces filter. Oh. So I'm going through this, and for each one of these interfaces, I'm only going to log the addresses associated with IPv4. Why? Because that's what we're going to use when we do our simple servers in class. So let's try running this, see how it goes. Okay, let's see what my interfaces are. Okay. For those that don't know networking, don't worry. We're going to have a whole section on that. And it's just the amount of networking you need, which for web purposes. Okay, so let's go with node net if.js. What's it printing out? Okay, host only virtual box. Oh, that's not an external interface. That's for my VirtualBox VM running thing. Wi-Fi. This is my external interface. Okay, once again, I'm limiting it to printing out IPv4. I can see my IPv4 address. Okay, that's a private network address that's behind my router. Okay, loopback pseudo interface. We're going to use that one too. We'll learn what that's about. 127.0.0.1. Okay, we'll learn about those. Now, what is NPM? NPM is the package manager for JavaScript and the world's largest software repository. So if you go over here, NPM.js, okay, you'll be able to search for packages. Now, we used to think that NPM stood for Node Package Manager, but they insist it's not. So every time you go to the site, you'll see a new explanation of what NPM means. Noisy, pirate, mutiny. Okay, and it'll change. I don't know if it changes every time you visit, but every couple of days it seems to change. So they just call it NPM now. Not supposed to stand for anything. Okay, they got lots of software there. JavaScript software that you can manage with NPM. Okay, it also offers a script running system, simple script running. Okay, all the development tools and JavaScript libraries we'll be using, okay, will be obtained via NPM. NPM gets installed with Node. Okay, NPM can take some time to install packages. Okay, that's why we're going to do certain techniques to avoid recreating huge arrays of things. So we have Node, and let's just see what we got here. Node version, I'm using 12.8. Okay, we have NPM version. Okay, not the same as Node, different package, but works. Comes with the same installation. So we're going to do packages. Okay, we can install things. Okay, come over here. Let me take a look. Common mark. Okay, I see this exact match. I see this package. Okay, weekly downloads, 173,000. Okay. Gives me some installation instructions. Very terse here. Okay, how we'll be this generally doing this, we'll go npm install package name. This does what's known as a local install to the directory that you happen to be sitting in. Okay, so what directory? pwd. I'm in this big long directory. Website, auto meta, lectures, express node. That's where I'd be installing locally to. Okay. We'll use this option for many libraries. Okay. For most of our development tools, we're going to do global installs. Okay. Install -G. Okay. Generally used for general development tools. I walked through here in this the slides installing a nice static web server. I'm not going to walk through the steps here because I've already installed it on my machine. You can go through the slide and install this. This is a good This is a good web server for delivering static pages and such. Okay, it's got lots of features. It's written in Node. It runs in Node and stuff like that. And I recommend it, but you don't need to install it if you don't want it. Now, let's take a look. So let's look, for example, at I'm going to look at a bigger project, something elaborate. Okay. So here is a project that has server and client side. What you're going to see is, in any case we're using NPM and we're using external packages, when we do that install, NPM will install things into a directory named node modules. This can get quite large. Let's look at it for the server project. Okay, properties. Okay. Not too bad here. 7 meg and 926 files. Why so many files? Professor, are you using that many different packages? No. I use a few packages, but those packages use other packages. Okay? And that gets large. Let's take a look at another one. Okay, let's look at the client side, which is a React app. Okay, let's look at Look at node modules here. Why am I talking about this? Because this is important for development. Okay, that's properties. Let's see how big this one gets. Ooh, this is getting larger. It's still tallying up. So I'm over 3,000 files here. It's still tallying up. I'm over 35 megabytes. There's a fundamental rule we're going to have here. Is we never, ever, ever commit node modules. Okay? It's still adding up. We'll let that continue to add up and come back and look at the total. Lots of little files. Why? We're using open source packages. Everything with JavaScript that we are using comes from source, not object files, not library files or things like that. We're actually pulling down the source for that. Okay? So we're never going to check node modules in. Okay? You don't need to share it with other people. But Professor, I use it to create my project. Yes, yes. Okay? We're going to show you how this can be recreated through a file called package.json, which is really important, which we're going to talk about right now. Package.json serves as documentation for what packages your project depends on. Okay, it allows you to specify this is the versions of a package that your project can use using semantic versioning rules. Okay, it makes your build reproducible. Okay, which means it's way easier to share with other developers. Okay, you can build a minimal one by hand. Okay, let's see, what did we get up to here? So for building my client app, the packages and such that I use, total size on disk 173 megabytes and 23,000 files. Never ever check in node modules. You don't need to. It can be recreated simply and easily. Okay. How, Professor? Via the package.json file. Let's look at package.json inside here, where you're going to see something in here. Dependencies, chart.js, common mark, express, gray matter. What are these things? These are libraries I'm using. Okay. React charts, React DOM, semantic UI, etc., etc. Okay. This was an elaborate project. It used a lot of other packages. Okay. So, how do we deal with this? Okay, you can start with one you build by hand. It needs the name of your project and a version number, minimal. Okay, or you can run npm init. Okay, let's find a place to do that. So here we're in this temp directory. Git. I'm just using this as my command line because it looks like Linux even though it's on Windows. Okay, I'll go npm init. Okay. Then it starts asking me questions. Package name, temp. My thing. Okay. Oh, name can no longer contain tab. My thing. Okay, version 1.0, sure. Description. Something making up here. Entry point. Hi Node.js. Sure, whatever. Test command. I don't know. Git repository. None. Keywords. None. Author. Me. As you can see, they allow you to, is this okay? Sure thing. Thank you. They created this little script for me. Now, if you find that a little tedious, and you'd just rather have them create it and then edit it, you can go npm init -- yes, and they'll just create, okay, or not, they won't overwrite things, okay? So that's 3 ways of creating one of these initial package JSON files. Then what I do, Professor? Okay, how do we maintain it? You can manually add and delete your project dependencies, but it's much easier to let NPM help you. Okay? So when I put in a regular package, like I'm going to use as part of my project, I go npm install, I give it the package name, -- save. Okay? If I do that, it will show up as part of the dependency list. Okay? If I go npm install package name -- save dev, they'll end up with the package dependencies. With the development dependencies. Okay. Now, you should version control, that means commit and push your package JSON. Okay. With a package JSON file in a directory, you go into that directory and just run npm install, and it'll recreate the entire node modules directory for you based on what's in your package JSON. Okay? So when I'm working with students, when I'm working with customers, when I'm working with whoever on JavaScript, I clone the repo, go into the directory, go npm install. Without saying anything, it will go look for the package JSON and install all the files needed. Okay, so that's how we work together. It makes it real simple. Okay, but we don't want to be cloning Node and downloading Node modules from GitHub or wherever your repo is. Okay, we always recreate it. Okay. It makes the zips of if you're going to distribute your package, your project via zip file, keeps them nice and small too, so it makes it easy. Okay, so we're going to always use a package JSON file. Now, for those in my more advanced class, this is kind of required, but this is optional. Okay. So the question is, how can Professor, people are using Node out in the real world for servers, okay? How can a Node.js-based server keep up with servers based on close to the metal languages such as C++ and Go, right? Shouldn't all servers be based on high-performance language? Okay. Couple things to consider. Browser vendors have highly optimized JavaScript execution. Okay, so just because it's a scripting language doesn't mean that what's in the browser engine, isn't going to highly optimize that. Why? We had the browser wars, okay, and the browser won. Okay, so that means people were in the tight fight of making their JavaScript execution better and better in browsers. Okay. The other thing is, most of the time servers are waiting on the file system or databases, or waiting on file servers and database servers. Okay. Processing a command in the server isn't usually the bottleneck. Okay. So usually one server is waiting for another server. file server or a database server. Okay? I am not telling you you should go do machine learning, okay, or heavy algorithmic stuff directly in JavaScript. Okay? If you're going to go launch a job like that, you turn it over to another server that's optimized for doing that kind of job. Okay? Hence, okay, so that's great. How does Node get around these things? Node uses a different approach to concurrency. Okay, it's event driven. We're not using, okay, the programmer, and this is the same for us programming JavaScript in the browser. We don't get threads, we don't get processes. Okay, you may get a little bit, you may have a choice of spinning off some processes with Node, okay, but generally the approach taken by Node is not to expose that to you. You don't have those things in the browser. Instead, wait, didn't we do events and callbacks? Didn't we do events and callbacks for dealing with button clicks and all sorts of things with the browser? Yeah. Okay. So you're saying we can do file system stuff around events and callbacks? Yeah. Okay. Let's look at simpleread.js. Okay. This is for reading a file. Require the file system. Okay. File system read file name. Okay, so here's the file name. UTF, what kind of stuff? Read file takes a callback function. Why does it do that? A callback function. What is the callback function? Process the file. Oh, if there's an error condition, there's some kind of error. Otherwise, oh, I'm just going to spit out the data. Okay, I get the data and can do something with it. Why is this? Okay, on a read file. Because when this executes, okay, it's going to take a while for things to come back. Okay, other things can happen okay, so it's event driven, meaning that this will register, say, I want you to go read this file. When you're done reading the file, call me. Seriously, call me back. Get it? Callback function, call me. Sorry, couldn't help it. Okay, let's see if this really works. Okay, let's go over to, let's close that one. Let's take a look. Simple read. Less simple read. Oh, okay, we'll bring it in the file system right here. Okay, file name. Okay, the callback function, and here's where we read it. Okay. When that callback function gets called, if there's no error, it's just going to console log the data right here. Okay. So let's try running it. Node simple read works like a charm. Seriously. Yes, seriously. This is okay. Node uses the event-driven non-blocking I/O model that makes it lightweight and efficient. Now, okay, JavaScript execution in Node.js is single-threaded. So Node.js uses an event-driven model for I/O to increase performance and scalability. Okay, they have a non-blocking guide you can refer to here. Okay, so this is very similar to the asynchronous model, the event-driven model we're going to see for JavaScript in the browser. Okay, now underneath, they have to use things like threads and things in event loops and polling and stuff like that. I mean, things like polling and stuff like that, but that's not what we see. Okay, how do they do it? Underneath, they get some help from a library called libuv. Remember, all the JavaScript stuff comes from the browser, but then it was, how do we access the file system? How do we access the network? That was new stuff that Node.js had to bring to JavaScript. Okay, that's why we have that Node.js documentation. Those are the libraries. Okay, they chose, okay, to go with asynchronous network operations, TCP and UDP sockets. Okay, you don't spin a thread for each new socket, for each new connection. Okay, you don't spin off a thread to handle DNS. Okay, you don't block. Okay, everything is event driven. Okay, including, okay, that includes file system and file system operations. Okay, so we get some help. Now, is this new? Okay, in the past we'd use blocking operations, so we'd have these separate threads or a thread pool to handle each connection that came into a server and stuff like that, or processes. That was fine at the beginning of the web, but things scaled up. Okay, things got really big. Okay, so innovation. Okay, how can we handle lots of connections? Okay, the Nginx web server used this approach so they could get around the limit on the number of threads that could be supported by an operating system. They said, hey, wait a second, let's use an event-driven model. Instead, we can just keep track of these things easily. We don't have to spin off a thread for these things, okay? Now that does require revisiting how you handle your whole network stack. I'm not saying that part's easy, okay, but conceptually, okay, the switch. Now, this really worked well. Gave them a vast improvement over the Apache web server, okay? The Apache web server then moved to an event-based approach in version 2.4, okay? Python is moving to this approach, but in the past had libraries such as EventLib to take a similar approach to achieve high performance, even though the language itself wasn't necessarily, geared towards a high performance language. You make a subsystem that uses this, okay? So, yes, it's new. No, it's not. We're going to be learning more about how to program in this model, okay? Everybody, both my undergrad and graduate classes. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to study it anymore, how they implement these things, okay? Very nifty stuff. It's current, and it's a nice way of handling certain types of asynchronous programming, parallel programming tests. Not good for all, okay? But in a sense, it's simpler than having to learn all about threads and blocking in that approach. We're going to be learning about this asynchronous, event-driven approach. And we're going to be using it in both the server side and in the browser side. For those of you not in my advanced class, I hope you enjoyed a little bit of an explanation. All right, Node and NPM. Let's get out and use them.